So you can start to see, wait a second, what are they offering public school students? Now sure, not everybody's gonna meet those standards in Massachusetts or California, but they wanted to make sure that if you wanted that as a parent, that this is what you do in your local school district. This is the plan. You can look at this plan. This plan does not do that. They end with Algebra 2, and they're not even a complete Algebra 2 course. So we started to see the problems. California had trigonometry, pre-calculus, and calculus standards. And like I said, they prepared you for Algebra 1 by 8th grade. From the English side, there's a focus on informational text versus like the classical literature. So that was one of her biggest problems with that. And just to give you an example of how important that is, classical literature is rich in vocabulary. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of teachers want to teach the classical literature. It introduces students to a broad range of vocabulary. So that's going to be, we're seeing the decrease in that. There's other problems, and these are individuals that you can just Google their name and you can look at their critiques if you want more detailed information on that. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to cover before. So the Smarter Balanced Assessment, that is a Common Core test, and it is in New Hampshire. And so if you're going to have Common Core standards, you've got to have Common Core assessments. So the federal government basically paid for these assessments, violating, I think it's like three federal laws in the process. And so we are stuck with the Smarter Balanced Assessment. This is a Common Core aligned assessment. And if you're hearing a lot of news about parents refusing to let their children take the Smarter Balanced Assessment, there's a lot of good reasons for this. Number one is Common Core aligned. So that if you've looked at any of the Common Core math, you're going to realize what the heck is this, because it's convoluted math. I'm a math tutor, and I can tell you I would not want to ever have to teach that math and have to tutor in that math. It's very confusing. So what do you think the tests are going to look like? Basically the same thing. The problem is I've got a Stanford, NASA mathematician saying, this is a big problem. This is not how you teach math. You have a standards expert saying this is not how you teach math. What are they doing? You've got parents, kids coming home with second grade math. They can't figure it out. That's a problem. So why take the test? A lot of the parents are saying, why take the test? Number one, and I agree with them. Quite frankly, my personal view is I would take an achievement test versus the Common Core assessments. An achievement test, like the Iowa Basic Skills Test or the Stanford Achievement Test or the California Achievement Test, anything with test in the back of it will give you an idea of where your child is, if you really want to know. And I don't blame parents if they want to know if their child's proficient in math or English. Take one of those tests. That's a good alternative. But the Smarter Balanced is a psychometric assessment. It is not an achievement test. And parents are figuring this out. The psychometric assessment is kind of like if you go into a job, they give you a personality test to figure out what kind of person you are. Because remember, the state needs to know information about your child to figure out where they go in life and where they go in their schooling. So they need to gather this information. They need to ask them about themselves. So you're going to see a lot of surveys coming out. A lot of these assessments. I looked at an assessment today. I posted on my Facebook wall. It was an English assignment on Shakespeare, and it had personal questions about the student on there. I wish I would have remembered some of the questions, but I mean, once I posted it on my wall, people were like, "You've got to be kidding me! What does this have to do with Shakespeare?" It has nothing to do with Shakespeare. It has to do with getting information. I had a parent today say that her son in New Hampshire was given an assignment about, does your mother love you? I mean, questions like crazy questions, things like that, like a psychological almost exam. So I'm gonna try to wrap this up real quick, just kind of finish up on the Smarter Balance. So my problem with Cornerstone has called for a halt to the assessment. because there are so many problems with it. From a math point of view, it's horrible. I mean, we've got Steve Rasmussen, if you're familiar with the Rasmussen polls, he has issued a critique on the Math Common Core. Professor Milgram is just, you know, he compares it to testing that they used years and years ago in California, and the parents were up in arms. This is like we're just revisiting history is all we're doing. We're just doing it nationally now. See, it happened in certain states. Now we're doing it as a national phenomenon. And they tried it in Kentucky years ago. It was a complete failure because, again, they're not testing achievement. They're assessing your values, your attitudes, your disposition, your child's disposition, those kind of things. So it's hard to move the pendulum in a forward motion when it comes to academics if this is your new focus. So be very careful when you start to see the scores come out with Common Core tests. When they come out, keep that in mind. You know, I don't believe it's going to show true proficiency in those subjects. There are academic questions. I'm not saying that there's no academic questions in there, but you know, the math questions are phrased. They're very confusing. Doesn't mean that they don't know math. They might not be doing it the way that Common Core is teaching. We literally have students that are not taking the assessment because they're told if you don't do it this way, figure out the problem this way, you're going to be marked wrong. Well, it's a long. Has anybody seen any math examples? Because I've seen so many, my head's about to explode. But I look at them and I think, you know, it's terrible what they're doing to kids. They're killing the level of learning because I see it in children all the time. Because when I work with them directly and you explain it to them, math is about taking a difficult concept and making it easy. Common Core takes a difficult concept and makes it harder. It will kill the love of learning in kids. That's what this is going to do. And as a female who wants to see females excel and possibly go into the STEM fields, you're going to kill it. And same with men. Please don't misunderstand me. But you know, there's this push to get females into these career paths and open this up to them. Good luck with that. I mean, thank God I went through school when I did because I understood math and I understood the teacher. And thank God, you know, I'm sure most of us, you know, did that. And even if you didn't fully understand it, eventually you got it. Eventually you did learn how to divide with long division. The convoluted ways they want you to use long division is just crazy. So we have a problem with the actual content of the assessment. On top of that, we've got, there's a child psychologist in Utah. His name is Dr. Gary Thompson. And I connected with him through Facebook and through other means. And he is a licensed physician practicing in Utah as a child psychologist. He has his own clinic. And he began looking at the Smarter Balanced and immediately was like, you know, because again, I told you about the psychometric testing and this is about personality. He's picking that up as he's reading these questions. And he's thinking to himself, and he says this, you can go listen to testimony. These are the kind of assessments he gives to his patients. These are not exactly the same, but he's seeing similarities. And he says that if he gave this kind of assessment to his patient, he would have to do that in a fully informed, consensual manner. Parents are not informed or consenting on these assessments. And his argument is he would lose his license as a medical doctor if he gave the Smarter Balance assessment to students without informed consent. He is calling it cognitive child abuse based on the questions, the way they are being asked, especially like the math questions because they're so confusing. So not only do you push kids back 2 years actually, because by the time they get to Algebra 1 in 9th grade, that's about 2 years behind the top performing countries, by the way. They're starting Algebra 1 in 6th and 7th grade. We started on Common Core in 9th grade. So you would think, well, they said, well, this is so rigorous, the Common Core is so rigorous. Confusing kids is not rigorous. That's not rigor. moving them along and challenging them to move to the next step when they're ready, that's rigor. You know, going to math is a logical progression. You build and you build upon the foundation. With competency-based education and Common Core, the foundation is very shaky. It's not really there, and that's what. And I'm not saying that as myself. I'm saying that as from the professionals, from those who have the credentials. I want to make that clear, and I could see it. So it's kind of like taking, especially with competencies, it's like taking a house and really focusing on your roof, and your foundation is very shaky. It's not really there. It's not there, and that's one of the biggest problems, and we're seeing it with competency-based education. So the competencies, to jump back to that real quick, their focus again is not on academics, it's on these workforce skills, and that's been around for a long time. So the assessments, they're now trying to develop competency assessments. Now, several years ago, what I did is I asked another professor out of Johns Hopkins, would you look at the competencies? Because right now we have state level or school level competencies. Would you look at the competencies on Rochester, Bedford? There was a couple different ones, and on the Department of Education. Department of Education had Eligible 1 competencies, and he gave like a scathing critique of them because again, this is not. They're not going to focus on academics. And so I think I'm just trying to paint you a picture of what the problem is. I just want to finish with there is a better way. We've seen it in Massachusetts. There's a better way to do it. You develop quality academic standards. You have a test that actually tests that. But at the same time, right now what Common Core does is there's a target on the teacher's back by trying to tie that assessment to the teacher in their evaluation. Now the teacher doesn't get to pick out the curriculum. The teacher doesn't get to be, the teacher's told how to teach. The teacher's told everything to do. And now we're going to evaluate you based on whether your students perform or not. But wait a second, didn't you just tell me exactly what to do? I didn't have a whole lot of choice in this, and now you're going to evaluate me. What about you guys up here? You know, how about you guys who develop the standards? Where's your evaluation? Where are you being tied to this? So I think that's the problem in a nutshell. I'm going to turn it over to Doris because I'll ramble forever. And then what we're going to do is, normally there's a lot of people that have questions. If you have any questions, we'll take questions then and kind of answer if you're still confused on any of this. Okay?
Switch.
Yep.
Hello, I'm Doris Hohensee. I live in Nashville. I've got 6 kids. I started as a homeschooler, and I didn't come here. I had my 6 kids in New Hampshire. I didn't plan on it. I just sort of fell into it backwards. My youngest was a handful, and I was trying to deal with my handful, and I thought I'd teach him to read and be quiet, and he wasn't. And we just kind of went on the progression, and all of a sudden it was time to go to school, and he kind of didn't fit in. So I heard that there was homeschooling, so there we were. We did it. And it was interesting. In 1990, they passed a law that pretty much was totally unconstitutional. We had to beg permission. We had to get our curriculums censored, approved. We had to keep a portfolio evidence to be used against us in a court of law. We had to have an evaluation every year to prove our innocence, innocent till proven guilty. I couldn't do it. So I figured, if I can't fight this, nobody can. So I took it upon myself to start fighting. 24 years later, after raising the kids, we finally did straighten out that law. My kids are all graduated. They were in and out of the high school a little bit, and thank God they're not anywhere near the schools now. It's a total mess. So I looked at it from a legislative point of view after we got the home ed law through. We thought, because now we just have to have an evaluation. We notify, we have an evaluation. It's private, just like everybody else's stuff is private. You put your private data in your back pocket, you keep it in a file, and if somebody needs it, they have to assume you're innocent till proven guilty. If you want to join a team, you have to prove that you're a good academic student. You might take it out then, but it's your choice. It's not this whole other, where we could be put on probation, we could be terminated, we had grievance meetings to see if we could plead our way out of being guilty. It was a mess. So in 2012, I thought I was done. I thought this is like, I could retire. And then I saw Common Core. So I've only been at Common Core for a year or two. It is a mess. It is far bigger than you imagine. But to start on something positive, you have to understand where we came from. Our Constitution, Part 1, Article 6, we had a fabulous section where it gave us academic independence. We had parishes and we had schools all at once, and then later they separated. When they separated, the statists thought, well, we'll only give the private schools this protection. No, everybody gets this protection. But the original language was, these bodies, these religious bodies, corporate bodies, the school district is a corporate body, had to make adequate provision at their own expense. At their own expense. And it said later that at all times, they have the exclusive right of electing their own public teachers and contracting with them for their support and maintenance. Those two lines, that's everything. They had a court case that defended it. When you elect your teacher, it's a constitutional right. They came from Europe. They didn't want to be taught somebody else's flavor of religion. They wanted to teach their kids